just looking at my watch. We'll give it just another 30 seconds or so, and then we can go ahead and get started. Sound good, Teresa?
Yeah.
Great. We want to thank everybody for joining us today and taking a little bit of time out of your busy day. If you're on the East Coast, maybe on your lunch break, just getting started with your day on the West Coast. Thank you. As I said before, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the initial survey results that we have been seeing from the Patient and Caregiver AWAKE Sleep Apnea Initiative survey. Hopefully, you have maybe visited the website, awakesleepapnea.com, and saw a little bit about the meeting that's taking place with the FDA on June 8th, and have seen the survey or the survey option there. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we've seen, and if you haven't taken the survey, this will be a little sneak peek at some of the questions, and then afterwards you can log on the website and complete it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and get started, Teresa. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I'll introduce myself real quickly. My name's Justine Amder. I'm a program coordinator here at the American Sleep Apnea Association. And I'll let Teresa go ahead and introduce herself.
I'm Teresa Schumard, and I'm the advocate for patients and community leader here at the American Sleep Apnea Association.
Teresa usually has the fun job of talking and leading some of these webinars, and today I get to join her in all the excitement. Exactly. Super fun. So just want to let everybody know just a little bit of housekeeping today before we get started with our slides and our discussion. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So we're going to keep all of the participants muted during the webinar while Teresa and I are reviewing the information. You do have the ability to type in a question anytime you want on the Q&A section of the platform, and we'll be able to see those and address those. And at the end of the slideshow, you could also click the button to raise your hand to speak, and then our host and IT guru, Sean, who's in the background, will unmute you and you'll get to talk to us directly. All right, keep it going. So just wanted to give a little bit information on our current stats and updates of the AWAKE Sleep Apnea Survey. As I said before, this survey can be completed both by patients and caregivers. And when we talk about patients, we also want to open the survey up to people that have been diagnosed with sleep apnea, or are in the process of getting diagnosed, or pretty much know that they have sleep apnea but maybe haven't started on the path yet. So whether you're diagnosed or undiagnosed, or a caregiver of someone that fits one of those two options, we encourage you to go ahead and complete the survey. As of right now, well, almost said as of right now, as of yesterday at 3 p.m., we had 1,400 surveys completed, and Teresa just checked a little bit ago. What number did you say that we had? We're up to
1466.
Oh, okay. Some more people have joined the group, and just gave a little percentage breakdown of where people are living that have completed the survey. Our highest region you could see is in the Midwest and in the South. The Northeast and the Western are pretty close, but we definitely would like to see more respondents from the Mid-Atlantic and mountain regions. We haven't had too high of a percentage from those, so it would be good to hear about patients' journeys and care and treatment that they're receiving in those regions. And then there's the website to take the survey. Teresa, do you want to talk a little bit about how we're going to use the survey, or how, the report that we're going to give, and just some general information about that?
Yeah. It's going to allow the FDA to see just what is going on with sleep apnea patients on their journey, uh, how difficult or easy it was for them to acclimate to their therapy, what types of therapy uh, people are getting, what kind of difficulties they may have had in any part of that, or maybe they had problems getting diagnosed. Maybe they were in denial, or maybe they lived alone and no one, they had no one to tell them that they were having apnea before diagnosis. So, just all these things and all these pieces that FDA isn't aware of. And since they are in charge of approving um, machinery and medications for disease states, this is very important that we get that education to them. Not so much education as making them aware of what's going on with people. And, you know,
Teresa and I, Teresa and I have talked a little bit about, you know, sometimes there are individuals that are a little hesitant to think that their survey or their response or their information is actually going to make any changes. And, Teresa and I have been talking about, the FDA and people in charge of helping patients and, reviewing new equipment and pharmaceuticals and whatever it is, if they don't hear from us, if they don't hear from patients, then they're not going to know that piece. So it really is up to us as a patient group to get our voices heard through a survey like this, or there's other advocacy things that you can utilize. But this is really going to help them see what it's like to be a patient, and it's important.
well, and I mean, for such a young science, I mean, essentially, sleep medicine is a very young science. It was only really like the 50s where it started to come about, and it really wasn't in the lab. There were no sleep labs yet. It was just, a lot of research and trial and error. For it to be so young, and for the FDA to raise its hand and say, wait, we want to see this group of people. We want to know more about this group of people. It's amazing, really. We are very lucky that they want to take a look at this.
Yeah.
So, very pleased.
And we all know that nothing happens overnight, and it might take just a little while, but, no change will happen if we don't say something.
Well, weren't we talking yesterday? If there is no advancement, if there's no talking about it, I mean, they would still be putting leeches on people to cure them. I mean, you have to think about the progress, and maybe it's not going to be in the next little bit, but it's going to help the next group of people that come along with sleep apnea, or
Right.
Your children when they get to be middle-aged. Think about that. I mean, you're paying it forward, really,
Right.
by doing this.
Yep. So let's dive into a little bit of the information and some of the questions and the responses that we've had. So it says up there Q2, which is the second question in the survey. And I think there's about 36, 39 questions total. So we just have a couple snippets here that we're going to look at. This is question 2. How many years since sleep apnea first affected your life? And, it's a good, 5 to 20 years, and that most of our respondents, you could tell from the graph there, that's where most everybody lies. Let's take a look at the next slide here. And the reason we want to know this type of question, how long have you had sleep apnea, is because we want to get a range of experience levels. from, people that have just been diagnosed to people that have had it years and feel that they're an expert on treatments and options and, have done their own independent research for themselves. We want to hear from all of that. And as I said, previously, that even if you kind of know you have sleep apnea, but you haven't had that formal diagnosis, you're not yet diagnosed, we still want to hear from you too, because what you're doing now and the challenges that you're facing, are important for us to make sure that we capture.
And nobody can tell the story except people that are going through it. I mean, you can have caregivers and medical personnel, but really and truly, it's up to the people that have it to tell what it's really like. So this is a very positive thing that's going on here.
Right. And for people that have had the condition for a while, we remember in the beginning, there's a whole set of different challenges than after you've been on your machine for 5 or 7 years. So in the beginning, it's a whole different story. And then, if you've been on your machine 5 to 7 years, just because you found a mask that you like doesn't mean that's the one that, they might stop making it and change models, and then you're back over it again. So, just because you got over the hump of the beginning of treatment doesn't necessarily mean that, it's the yellow brick road, everything's all perfectly paved from here on out for you. Things still do change. And then, patients that have been diagnosed for, 20 years or more or something along those lines, they've seen all different types of treatment changes. Maybe some with technology, maybe some with the equipment. Things have definitely been improved, but there's probably still areas that people would say are definitely lacking. So this is an opportunity to be able to get that information out there. Have anything else, Teresa, or should we?
No, I think that's a pretty good summation there.
Right. So how long did it take to get treated? Question 7. This one is kind of an interesting one. I think that a lot of us that work at the American Sleep Apnea Association, I have to say we're probably a little surprised with the big blue bar saying within 12 months, of being diagnosed. But then I think that when we kind of looked at it a little bit more, we kind of thought about it when we read some of the comments and so forth, we thought of it a little bit more from, well, once you decided that you were going to go to the doctor and start on the sleep apnea journey, it took 12 months or less to get under control, which is a positive number to see. But as you can read, from some of the actual comments, the person, yes, was diagnosed in 1 month, but suffered for 2 years with other things that they didn't realize was sleep apnea. And I think that that's true for a lot of people. Wouldn't you say, Teresa?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, it's touching on some of those, the second comment there, because I was thin, no one really, wanted to think that it was sleep apnea, or the concerns were just dismissed. We hear that often and a lot. This is obviously probably from a caregiver or a spouse or a partner. I knew he had it, he just didn't want to deal with it. So that's a common one too, pretty much. We've seen that a lot in the survey. Didn't want to admit that I have it, didn't want to have to wear the CPAP machines, so didn't really, try to seek a diagnosis. And then again, kind of touching on the first part, misdiagnosed, thinking they had depression for all of these years, when really it was their sleep that was, compiling those issues.
And the whole depression and stigma of falling asleep at your desk or falling asleep when you have company, or not being able to get up out of the chair to go out and play with the kids, that kind of thing. It really changes the dynamic of families. And I mean, if you think about, we actually spoke to a gentleman the other day that was fired from his job because he kept falling asleep. And he was a thin person, so no one would uh, really pay attention to the fact that he was so sleepy and was falling asleep at the red lights, and that kind of thing. So it's really it's come full circle now. I think that we now know that it's not the weight of the person. It's what's in your throat. It's how you're built. Could be something that's been passed down through your family.
Yeah.
um,
And I think, I'm just going to go back to that graph for a minute. I mean, I think it's going to be one of the ASAA's, education and outreach pieces that, it says, okay, yeah, I got diagnosed in a month, but I had it for 2 years. Well, we don't want you to have it for 2 years before anybody figures it out. Or we don't want you to get diagnosed for depression for 20 years and not get treated for your apnea and try to figure it out. So we're going to have to, work together with our community to change those pieces of the puzzle, that people can get identified and treated quicker, hopefully. And having a survey like this and our community responding to it and getting that information to the FDA is hopefully another step closer to getting that change.
Absolutely.
And then we just kind of noted at the bottom that, as a lot of us that are familiar with sleep apnea, or if you're not, and joining us today, it can get disguised as some other condition and kind of be a little, like I said, a little piece of the puzzle. And it can be at the same time as the other comorbidities that you're having, your high blood pressure, your heart issues. So, it's definitely not, I don't want to say it's not easy to diagnose, but it's, you have to work with your healthcare provider and be an active participant, I think, in order sometimes for it to get a correct diagnosis. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, think about something like diabetes. If there's anybody out there that has type 2 diabetes, how fatigued you are for no reason at all. And that could be a mask for the sleep apnea condition going on as well. It could be a little of both, which we all know it is. I mean, if you have both conditions, now that feeling tired all the time wasn't only related to your pancreas.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I clicked forward on the slide talking about the primary factor for seeking diagnosis. And this one is not a bar chart, so I can't tell you what exact question it was, but these were the answer choices. So, you could see the top three was, the symptom level was so bothersome or intolerable. And then kind of family members and medical professionals are pretty close together, 5% difference there. But, I think that with the number one answer being the symptoms were just intolerable, that, as we were already talking about, you just don't feel well. And you're trying to figure out, what's going on mentally, emotionally, physically. And eventually you land on your sleep, because you maybe ruled out this, ruled out that, trying to help with, this ailment or that ailment. And you're feeling a little bit better, but not as well as you should be. And then you come back around to your sleep.
Yeah.
And then
the symptoms being intolerable is very interesting, because I think that a lot of people that we've spoken to have stated that they were just so grouchy. And, although at first they didn't realize that they were grouchy, that was just their normal because they were so sleep deprived, naturally, a little grouchy there. But, that's intolerable after a while, after you've, alienated family members and the dog and everybody else.
Right.
It's like that grouchiness is because of something. It's not just because they're Oscar,
Yeah. When your dog's mad at you because you won't take them on a walk every day or something, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty unconditional. They're pretty unconditional. When they're mad at you, you better take a look in the mirror, right?
Right.
And then the number two, family and friends. And, obviously the people that, live with you or are in the place where you sleep at night with your snoring or gasping or all that kind of stuff, or have to deal with your grouchiness on a daily basis. They could be saving your life by pushing you to the doctor and to talk about it. So,
I remember from being a sleep technologist that, there would be a lot of guys that would come in there and the wives would come with them as they were getting hooked up or whatever. And so a lot of the time the husband would be so kind of like in disbelief of this whole thing, like, oh, why am I getting all this put on me? There's nothing wrong with me. She's making me come here, and so I would always be sure, and let them know that, after they got their titration study, that, she saved your life by
right.
nagging you in here. So.
There was one respondent answer when I was looking at the survey that was saying they were sleeping in the same room as their child during their child's sleep study. And that the next morning, the texts were like, you need to go have a sleep study. Like, your snoring, your noise, we watched you toss and turn, they were like, forget it. Like, if sleep apnea runs in families, it's coming from you. So that was pretty, that was interesting. But again, getting back to the fact that, this survey and what you type in and your responses and your answers really help describe the journey of this condition and this disease and what it takes to get the care that patients need. And, we want to be able to paint the best picture of what life is like, from getting diagnosed and getting treatment, dealing with the treatment and keeping up with the treatment plans or options that you have, once you get on them. We want to describe that to be able to put that in for the FDA to get that picture. Because, they're seeing a lot of things, they're seeing all different types of medical devices, whether it's something, you can wear like a mask or something on your nose or something you can have implanted, you can take a medication to help, you could take this. I mean, they're obviously seeing everything. Everything has to go through them. So to really be able to describe a clear patient journey is so important.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else we got here. Top concerns on living with sleep apnea. Heavily weighted, the long-term consequences on my health and my lifespan. And just think, if you're not getting treated, your lifespan and your health are definitely much worse. That's for sure. We all know that. And, effects on your physical, mental performance and daily activities, walking the dog who doesn't like you anymore. That's a big one too. So here were some concerns. I mean, what we had some, I don't want to canned answers. That's all I can think of right now. We had these were filled in options that you could choose. But there was also a lot of interesting comments that respondents had put on there. Other concerns that they really have with sleep apnea. And you could take a read here through losing electricity and not being able to use the machine, and what that would mean for extended periods if you live in a place. I mean, we all saw some hurricanes and storms last year. Those people struggle just on a daily basis for basic needs, and then they have to deal with not being able to use their medical equipment as well. This was a woman that was just, she would lie and cry before having to put her CPAP machine on. She just couldn't believe that she had to wear something, to sleep every night and to stay healthy. A young person being 18 and thinking this was going to be, something they needed to use for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Worried about the symptoms of the OSA increasing and then have to have surgery to correct it. The machine isn't going to be able to help anymore. And then another very common one is the replacement parts for the equipment.
Yeah. And many times insurance, is not going to even really help because you have the high deductibles, and a lot of people are just going online and,
Mm-hmm.
getting their pieces of equipment, their extra hoses, whatever, just and paying out of pocket because it's cheaper.
Yep. So let's take a look here at the next slide. This one was question 29. We have a nice graph. What barriers did you encounter in sticking with treatment to help manage your sleep apnea? And you could take a look there. We just talked about the financial. That was the third highest ranking reason. Inconvenient and uncomfortable, which probably goes along with lying in bed crying that you have to use this machine, or the stigma of it, or what have you. I mean, nowadays you go through the airport, it's like everybody has a little gray bag.
Yeah.
With them, through the airport security. You're like, oh, I'm sure if you sat there for an hour, you would count hundreds of them, maybe even thousands, depending on which airport you're at and how busy it is. See people come through. But as we stated before, right now the gold standard for treatment is PAP therapy, and we all know it doesn't come without challenges, and that's a inconvenient. What were the two that they said? Inconvenient and I forget the other one.
Financial.
Yeah, the financial was the third one. And that's a whole other can of worms. Dealing with insurance and how that's playing out in the United States today. But I think no matter what type of level of insurance you have, there's always some sort of payment that is needed for CPAP supplies. So,
well, and the whole system of medicine there's been a paradigm shift, just so that there's more involvement now with patients being involved in their care. And I don't know if that's totally because, there are patients that are their own advocates more and more, or if it's the way the medical system and the reimbursement system is all set up. It has kind of lent itself to this model now, where we used to go to the doctor and the doctor would tell us what to do, and we would just listen to every word and take care of whatever he said to do. Where now it's more It's more common for the patient to have to be involved in the whole regimen. So it's changed, but I don't think it's a bad thing, because who's better who's a better advocate than yourself for your own? You know what's going on. You can
Right.
tell what's going on. But
My
education is
cat,
key.
my cat trying to
Education,
walk across the
yeah.
room.
But education is the key,
Yes.
and there are some really good sleep labs out there, and sleep uh, professionals that are educating. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at a later date. But we really have seen. I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and such a change, in the
Well,
uh,
now information is more easily accessible to
yeah,
patients, which is a
yeah,
good thing. So you
it
go
is
into
a
the
good thing.
doctor more, now. I mean, I even see a difference between myself and like my mom, the generation that like you're describing. She goes to the doctor, she says, "Oh, this hurts." She gets the information and then, she does that. Whereas when I go, it's more of a conversation. What about
Mhm.
this? I read about that. Does this work? Should I change this? So, well, those are some of the sneak peeks on the survey and some of the answers and comments to the questions that we have. Do we have any questions that are out there, whether they're on Facebook or online? I don't know if I know how to
Well,
look around.
I'll run over to Facebook and see what I think we have some in the chat area also. You can
Mhm.
let's see,
There
from
was a
Doug
gentleman
Herbin.
here, Teresa. There was a gentleman here on the chat, Doug, and he said, "Are new cases diagnosed in people 80 years and older?" Oh, and someone said, "Yes, definitely,
Yes,
true.
definitely.
Yes, it's true."
Because they're trying to sell stuff like so clean. In the process, they are creating a fear of CPAP-borne infection. Is this a realistic fear? Note that I've been using CPAP for almost 18 years and don't ever remember getting an infection that I think came from CPAP. Well, it is true that you can get terrible infections from a dirty CPAP or a dirty mask, or um, you're inhaling bacteria and all kinds of germs when they aren't cleaned. Now, does that mean that you have to have a so clean to do so? No. I mean, you can still do the wash it up and put it on a clean towel and have it ready for the next night. But some people have chosen to go to some of the machine sanitizers because it's more convenient for them.
Hmm.
So I don't think that it was a bad idea coming up with these machines at all. I'm glad to see them.
Right.
Uh, let's see. There's another one down there. I've seen a patient diagnosed at 85 years old. Absolutely, there. No one is, too young, too old, too young. We have babies on it.
Hmm.
Seems to be tired. My mom is 88. She seems to be tired too easily and has poorly controlled blood pressure. Does she have? So she hasn't been tested. And says, Doug, we would suggest getting your mom a home sleep test if you think she may have OSA. In most cases, this is something insurance will pay for. My husband just is taking his home sleep testing equipment back to the lab as we speak. So,
Hmm.
it is a very easy thing to manage at home. And if you think that she doesn't like to be in a lab, I mean, I myself would prefer to be in a lab, but that's just my own my own preference. Let's look here at the Q&A. Somebody said we have some. Okay. What about singing or throat exercises or mouth taping helping before bedtime? Well, I'm not sure. Mouth taping, I'm not sure if you mean with the CPAP on or what there. Maybe you could clarify that one. I don't know
But
who
there
else.
are, I mean, you know, I know with my daughter who uses a CPAP machine and nasal mask, she's 10. And we have been working to expand her palate with, you know, various type of orthodontics. She, you know, we're probably not as diligent as we should be, but, you know, with mouth exercises, you know, different types to help with the structure of her jaw and her muscles and things like that. So she'll sleep with her mouth closed versus open. So, you know, I'm aware of those types of things. So, you know, there might be some singing. And what was that? What's that instrument, like the didgeridoo, I think it's
Yeah,
called?
yeah.
Big, long, like rain tube sounding very
Uh-huh.
low, like, you know, I don't know which culture or tribe or whatever has that as one of their preferred instruments, but you know, the way that you get the instrument to make a sound is using different muscles and diaphragm and things than you normally would.
Mm-hmm.
And they've looked at that. It may be helping, but you know, the things that we're talking about here, this is, you know, these are good things that we would like to be able to capture in the survey. You know, because there are places for people to talk about what they have supplemented their treatment with. You know, maybe they are using CPAP, but they kind of want to get off of it, so they're trying this type of singing or this type of instrument, or they're trying these types of myofunctional exercises for their mouth. You know, these are important things to note, and that we could, you know, speak on to the FDA. So by completing the survey, you can give us that info.
Sure, there's so many things. I mean, there's, you know, the oral appliances, there's nasal dilators, there's so many things out there that can be tried. Some people even wear nasal dilators with their masks, with the nasal mask. I mean, I've seen it all. Um, Here's another comment up in the Q&A. It says, although they routinely screen for diabetes, high blood pressure, etc., there is no routine screening for sleep apnea, even though it's just as common. That is so true. My husband is the classic example. He's been going to the doctor, and they've been checking for this and checking for that. And of course, I diagnosed him at home. I said, you have it. I mean, I watched him just like I watched people in the sleep lab. And I said, you go and ask that doctor for a home sleep test, because I knew he wouldn't want to go to a lab. So that's what's going on here, just, you know, so that his insurance will take care of it. So, because I know he's going to be coming back
Well,
with a CPAP.
that's what we said earlier. You know, the respondents that said that they were diagnosed with depression for 20 years.
Yeah.
They were dealing with situations and issues and ailments for 2 years, but once they started on the sleep apnea, it only took a month, you know, to get that under control, you know, get the diagnosed and at least started on their treatment plan. So that's exactly what we said, you know, that like that comment that he or she made is that, yeah, it gets lost sometimes in the shuffle, because it can affect so many other different things. I'm going to use the word confusing. It gets confusing.
Well, and then you're tired too, so it's even more confusing.
Right.
Robert, oh, go ahead, hon.
Hear from I see David on the webinar chat. What did he say? I shared he did share with us that, you know, sometimes sleep apnea doesn't knock gently at your door. It knocked on his door as a major stroke, and thankfully the medical world was also very good at triaging after the fact. Yeah, that's true. Yep. But
Here's
telling a story like that on the survey, is important because just like you said, we've talked a lot and have mentioned some things today on this little sneak peek that, I've had this condition, I've had that condition for so many years, and it turned out to be sleep apnea. Well, here's Dave's story. He might have been okay health-wise, and then all of a sudden, boom, this, a major stroke happened to him. So it paints a little bit of a different picture, and we want to make sure that we capture that. So hopefully, Dave, you completed the survey. But
Robert S. is asking, how do OSA sufferers with excessive daytime sleepiness navigate a path to return to work where they can be reliable employees and discuss the impact of their sleep disorder on work performance? How would you suggest that a person do that, Justine? You coming from the
can you read it to me again? I got distracted by this message that popped up.
Sure. How do OSA sufferers with excessive daytime sleepiness navigate a path to return to work where they can be reliable employees and discuss the impact of their sleep disorder on work performance? And I thought, since you come from a human relations background, that you could,
Yeah, we've actually talked about this before, Teresa, you and I, a little bit. I mean, I have been out of the direct HR function for, a good 10 years now. But, that's one of the things that I would say it kind of depends probably more on the culture of the company and, what their HR policies are. As we've all known over the years, wellness programs have come up in different types of companies. And, when there are certain type of I'm going to call them health issues, but, maybe more fall into like mental health issues or addiction issues or, things of those nature. There's a lot of companies that, now, and even for, when I was working in HR 10 years ago, gave their employees access to receive help, guidance, help, whether it was through their medical plan or just, counseling and things like that. So, I would say that the first step is to, reach out to the HR department. And I know sometimes it's hard because, you don't want to get a certain label, and you reach out for help. Sometimes you worry that you're going to get in the label, but, maybe you could do it in a way that like, you're just curious what types of programs are out there for help, what type of wellness programs, what's offered through anything through my benefits. And, maybe after that, you can build a relationship with some of the people in the HR office, and that, you can talk to either them or directly to your manager. In my experience, it's always been on what the relationship is, personal relationship between, the company and its employees, the HR department and their employees, and the manager that you're dealing with. Sometimes it's not as easy to navigate as it should be, unfortunately. What else do we have? Do we have anything else? You still there, Teresa?
I am.
Did I lose you?
I'm trying to get over to Facebook to see.
I'm reading what's up here. Let's see if this. How common is OSA in the complete absence of audible snoring? Here goes my kitty cat trying to join the conversation on sleep apnea. There's definitely a correlation. You don't have to be a snorer to have obstructive sleep apnea, at least from my understanding. Now, granted, I just told you my background's more in human resources than it is in the medical field. I wear a CPAP machine personally because I have UARS. I do not snore, but I was having issues with nighttime reflux. And I don't technically have OSA, I have UARS, but, they're very similar. So I think in the absence of complete snoring, I don't think that means that, you're off the hook in regards to all types of sleep-related breathing issues. Is that true? Fair to say, Teresa? You're more of an expert than me.
I'm sorry, I was over in Facebook. What did you ask me?
The one gentleman was talking about how common is OSA in the absence of audible snoring. And I was saying that, I have UARS, I never snored. Yeah. And it's very similar to OSA, but, that from my standpoint and what I have learned and from the ASAA while I've been here is that, yes, you can have it without necessarily being a snorer or a loud snorer.
Absolutely. It can be there, and usually that, I've seen that happen where they wouldn't have a loud snore. They were a little bit on the younger side, but it was definitely starting. It's almost like snoring is sort of definitely the indicator, but I think that the snoring will come along eventually. If you're having the other symptoms, the only way to tell is to have your sleep measured and tested.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having those symptoms of excessive daytime sleepiness and irritability and frequent urination during the night, it doesn't hurt to have a sleep test.
Right. Yeah, and I was speaking about myself with the UARS, and then, if I think back, my daughter's now 10, but she started showing some signs, some sleep issues at the age around 2, and she didn't snore. She was more of a sigher. She would sigh. But, because of mostly my husband's facial features that she inherited, when she did her study, she tested positive for sleep apnea, and she wasn't a snorer. So, yeah.
And that little gal puts her CPAP on and goes right to sleep now.
Yeah, takes it to sleepaway camp and everything. She's probably better than most people, most adults.
Yeah.
More compliant than most adults. Someone asked, are there any apps or wearable devices that can help people who snore get a better indication of their need, I guess, for a sleep study or for a sleep test?
Well, you know what the best thing is? Put a camera on yourself. If you really want to know, put a camera on yourself and let it roll, and then watch it in fast forward and, keep listening or keep watching. And if you can remember back to Grandpa sitting in the recliner and you heard him snoring and you heard silence and then you heard the sort of gasping, what we call the recovery breath, that's apnea. And, if you see that on your video, the answer is yes, you have it. So you need to be tested, where you have some science behind it, and they can measure it to see what you're going to need for pressure. Or maybe you're going to need an oral appliance, or maybe you're going to need something else. There's so many things now.
Well, there definitely are apps and devices out there that track your sleep and, help you with this or help you determine that. But me personally, I think that they can how do I want to describe it? They can help you, get information, but I think you still need to talk with your doctor about, how you're feeling, what's going on, what you're worried about. Just because something you wear on your wrists or put next to your bed says your sleep is totally fine,
Yeah.
I wouldn't just automatically say, okay, it's totally, it's like supplements, they do help, but you still need to probably go to your doctor a little bit and ask a couple of questions. So,
Oh, here's a great question. Sleep apnea sufferers would love if the FDA would approve the oximeter sensors on the Apple Watch, Fitbit, etc. devices to see their desaturations, and it would be incredible for detection. Is the FDA looking for this kind of input? Yes, yes,
yeah,
please do.
yeah, yep, yeah. It's any information that that is important to you on your journey of care and treatment. That's what the survey's for. That's why there's comment sections in every question that's asked. So, yeah, there's some canned answers and some options, but if that didn't fully describe what you wanted to say by just checking those two boxes or one box, you can write and you could tell a little bit of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the time. This is our chance. So we have to encourage everyone to come forward and tell their story. It's
Right.
it's it's a good thing. This is a very positive initiative.
I think we just before, remember there was the woman that asked, or the man that no, it's a woman, Mary Lou, asked about mouth taping. Um,
Oh yes.
I think she's wearing a nasal mask, and so then she's opening her mouth when she's
Oh.
sleeping.
Well, some people do that. We used to tell people, I remember back, we used to tell people not to do that because, I mean, as there would be a lot of worry that if someone told you to do that, say that you maybe became ill and you might vomit, you could aspirate and die, and nobody wants to be the one to say, yeah, go ahead and tape your mouth, and them say, well,
Mhm.
they could be liable. I mean, if they told uh say they said that and the spouse heard it, I mean, the medical professional could be sued. So
Mhm.
it's something that I think people do at their own, with their own,
Discretion.
yeah, their own discretion. There are chin straps and all kinds of other devices, but I always said,
Well, the chin
uh,
strap seems like a
oh
good
yeah.
option, because obviously your mouth is free to do what it needs to
Hmm.
do, but it's helping you keep it closed.
Hmm.
So that might be a good option to look into versus just going directly to the taping.
Well, and if finances allow, think about this. If you have a cold, your nose is not going to be open for you to breathe. You might need that full face mask a couple times a year just to have on hand, because now you've got the mouth and the nose covered, and you're going to get the pressure from one or the other. So, I saw a lot of people that would keep one just for those times when they had allergies or colds, what have you. And then some people cannot seem to keep their mouths closed. So here's someone that's asking, too many sufferers outside the profile, thin, female, younger, non-snorer, etc. Yep, that's exactly right.
Well, that's one of the things, part of the in-person meeting that's going to take place on June 8th is that we have a patient panel. And we, as the association, have tried really hard. Teresa's, spoken to and worked with a bunch of different people to make sure that we get a range of people to show that it is not just a older man's overweight condition. You
Yeah.
know, there are sufferers when they were pregnant, postpartum depression. There, you know, what other issues that we had? You name it. You know, younger people that have, you know, in their 30s, 40s that did the MMA surgery, you know, to try to combat the condition. I mean, so we've really tried to, you know, not just paint in that little box that the person that responded just painted there, that, you know, it's not overweight men with big necks who are, you know, in their 40s or 50s or something along those lines. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. Someone asked, we talked about like devices and things before, and then Doug here asked, how reliable are the stats from my Dream Station Auto CPAP? What about other CPAPs? I think the stats from your CPAP machine are pretty good, I would say.
Yeah. They're reliable. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
not getting leaks and you're not getting, you know, if you're not having any problems with getting the pressure in
Mm-hmm.
your upper airway, then there
Yeah.
shouldn't be any problem there.
It's just more kind of all those different devices that we
Yeah.
have now, watches and bedside stations. You know, I mean, I don't want to make the case that, oh, you know, don't use them, don't look at the information that they're providing. Yeah, you can. You know, they're very helpful with all types of other, you know, measurements. It's just you have to, you know, you just have to be smart, smart consumer. You know. And just use it to help you in your healthcare.
Here's another HR question. Back to returning to employment, not whether the employer has benefits or programs, but how does one set expectations with an employer with a chronic medical condition that may impact their work performance?
I'm reading it here now because I was moving things around. Hopefully, I'm not distracting anybody. Returning to work earlier. How does one?
In other words, how do they
Yeah.
get their HR department ready for, you know, what's going to happen, you know, or what they may be looking like at work or doing at work?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's something to discuss in the beginning of, you know, of the relationship. Um, you know, talk with the HR department, talk with the manager, wherever you feel, you know, most comfortable, or maybe where you'll get the time that you need, or that the person is a little more maybe receptive per se. But that would be my suggestion, is that, you know, you don't want to wait until 6 months in, you know, when someone may have already developed an opinion on what's transpiring, but to go ahead and talk about it in the beginning part of it. I think it's very helpful too when you are when you have a condition and you are in treatment and under a doctor's care, versus saying, oh, I think I have this and it's going to affect me, you know, in my job. You know, it's kind of a little bit more of, you know, that you're showing you're being proactive, you know, with your care, and you just want to make them aware that you have, you know, sleep apnea, and that, you know, you're on treatment with your machine, and, you know, but there's still some hurdles that you're crossing, you know, with your condition and your health, and you'll keep them, you know, updated if as things progress or change. But, you know, that would be my suggestion, is to have the conversation as soon as you can.
Here's another question. First of all, thanks for putting this on. I'm learning a lot. I use a full face mask and a chin strap because my mouth pops open when I hit REM. My pressure is high enough to dry my mouth and wakes me up. Do you have a humidifier, would be my question to that.
Mm-hmm.
that would certainly take care of the dry mouth. Now, maybe you are opening your mouth just a little bit and you don't know it. Uh, you can push right through that chin strap if your jaw is stout enough to do so. That can happen. But a little moisture could help if there's no leak. Now, I would, if you don't have the feedback on your machine, then you have the humidifier cranked. They answered right away. Then I'm thinking there's probably a leak, and check that out. If there's not a leak, then you might want to check with your sleep team at the sleep lab or the DME. We have two more questions here. Where to find information about the throat exercises, and is there a specific name for them? Mary Lou, if you would, are you on the AWAKE page? If you are on the AWAKE page, you can write to me there, and I will get you, or I'll just post the exercises, or a link to those exercises for people. I'm putting that down on my list here. What protection do those with sleep apnea get from the ADA, the American Disability Association? Well, I don't know the answer to that. That would be probably an Adam question. I don't know if there's
I think
any
we can
connection.
we can write that down and post that in the Awake group that you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody that's here today knows that we have the American Sleep Apnea Association. We have a Facebook page where we post a lot of information and articles and events coming up and so forth. But we also have a private Awake, isn't it called Awake Sleep Health? That was called?
Yes.
Awake Sleep Health private group, which is a little bit more like one of the programs that we have is an Awake group, which is a peer-to-peer support group that some doctors' offices and sleep labs have on site across the U.S. And this is kind of like an online version of it, where Teresa and several other experienced sleep professionals are there. Answer questions, engage in conversation, people helping people, patients helping patients. And so I think we could put a few things up in there. So if you're on Facebook or interested in that, go ahead and join the private group, and we could put some information up there on that as well.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we're out of time, Justine.
Geez Louise, we were like worried that we were going to be able to go 30 minutes.
I know. Well, thank you for coming, everybody. We're so happy to see you. Please take the survey. It's so necessary, and every voice is going to matter. Every comment, everything is going to matter, and they really are looking at the data. So don't be afraid that nothing is going to come of this. There's going to be plenty of work to do after this initiative is over.
Yeah, and if by chance you live around the College Park, Maryland area, a little bit outside of DC, you can register in person to join us there on the 8th. So if you're here with us, or if you have family or friends that have the condition and they're in the area, send them over to the website and tell them to join us that day if they can.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well,
thanks, Teresa.
Well, thank you, Justine. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Tanya. She was here answering questions and helping us. Great. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we'll see you soon.
Oh, I'm going to answer this one quick question here. I'd like more frequent replacement for those things that have Velcro, even if their items it's gone. It just disappeared. But the person that asked that question, please put that in your survey, as in the comments area. That would be very important to say, because I could see where that'd be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Great.
All right,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody. Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.